Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Such an exciting day. I just want to say, we're so blessed to have everybody come and join us here today for such a special event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Leah Lalonde. I'm the Director of Health Services with Mamaway Wiidokdaadwin. So we're an Indigenous interprofessional primary health care team. And this is an example of what we think is healthcare. Very important cultural approaches to healthcare. And so we're happy to have you here with us today. And I just wanted to welcome, at lunchtime we had lots of opportunity to meet many of our Mamaway team. So beautiful that they're all here to support this event. I'd also like to thank the Aurelia Native Women's Group. So they'll be drumming for us a little later this morning. Very important as we go out and take a peek at the paddocks. I'd like to also acknowledge our amazing guests and Indigenous portfolio holders from BMO and Nesbitt Burns. So thank you for being here and listening. And our community members and our community partners from Waypoint and anyone else that I've missed, I'm sorry. And I'm going to leave it to Ashley Bergman. I want to thank Ashley as well for all of her great support in organizing this event today. And she'll take some time to introduce our amazing and illustrious speaker today, Rhonda Snow. So thank you, Ashley.
Good morning, everybody. What a beautiful room of people we have here today. It is an honor to be entrusted to put together an event of this magnitude and to be the one introducing our keynote speaker and storyteller today. She needs no introduction, but I'm honored to be the one to introduce her. We have the most incredible speaker and storyteller and renowned artist here with us today. She has traveled nearly 20 hours by car to come here to share the stories of the Ojibwe Spirit Pony with us all. And her knowledge is something you can't find in a textbook. You can't find it anywhere. So we're really, truly blessed to have her with us today. And she has really dedicated her life to making sure that the Ojibwe Spirit Pony lives on and that their spirits are intact. And she has dedicated her life and been recognized and was the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award. She's a member of the Loon Clan. She's an Anishinaabe woman. She also goes by Native Pony, which, as you can see, the walls of this beautiful bank farm are decorated with her artwork, which tell the stories of the Ojibwe Spirit Pony. And it is absolutely an honor to introduce my newfound friend, Rhonda Snow, to share the story of the Ojibwe Spirit Pony with us all and her journey of having over 70 wild Ojibwe Spirit Ponies within her own herd. Please give a warm welcome to my friend Rhonda Snow. Of course, walk around with it.
Bonjour, everyone. I'm going to have a hard time talking because I have such a smile on my face. And I'm so proud to be here today. And I'm proud of the little ponies and the people that have such rich stories to tell. And my name is Rhonda Snow. I was raised around a Catholic family, but my father, he is a Chippewa, a member enrolled of the White Earth Band of Chippewa in Minnesota on White Earth. And really when he married my mother, he came out of the bush. He lived in a little house, a dirt floor with a grass roof, and he wanted to get out of the bush. So he went into town and married my mother, and then I was born, and I was raised Catholic, and I went to the Catholic school. I had no idea who I really was, and I would ask my father, Dad, people are teasing me. Am I Indian? He said, oh, just a little bit. Don't worry, you'll be okay. But I found out I am from the Loon clan. And my native name that was given to me by my medicine man, who I worked with the sweat lodges with, is Mamaway Wiidokdaadwin. And it means the woman that goes all around in circles, in the air, on the water, in the water, and on the land doing good things. And my medicine man told me the story of this woman that did this, and he had to repeat it to me probably about 4 or 5 times before I said to him, are you talking about me? He says, yes, you're Mamaway Wiidokdaadwin. So I looked further, and I wasn't quite sure exactly what this all meant. I had been gifted a loom pipe, but I realized it all started when I was 11 years old. And it is about the trail of these little native ponies. And I was young, and at 11, I lived on a road called Colonization Road West. And on the weekends, I would skip over to my girlfriend's house, and the loggers were all there having coffee on Saturday mornings. And I was pretty shy. And I'd knock on the door, and I'd say, can Carla come out and play? And he would say, well, she's not ready yet. Come on in. And I'd hide around the staircase, because they would tease me. Some of them would tease me about being a jigaboo, which I was so shy, I hid around the staircase, but I listened because my girlfriend took forever to get ready. And one day, an elder who was working in the bush all the time, Danny Crow, he said 2 words that changed my life. And they were Indian ponies. I had grown up drawing white horses and dogs. And when I heard the words Indian ponies, I stood up and I peeked around the staircase to see who was saying it. And I heard the stories about these little tiny ponies that used to live on the islands in the bush where I lived. And I thought, I'm going to find them someday. The reason why I said the word ride is because I always tried to ride these little ponies around the corner. But the man was a Western man. He wouldn't allow me to because I was Indian, he said. But when I heard about the little Indian ponies, I thought I'm going to find them someday. So I looked and I searched and I couldn't find them anywhere. And when I got older, I finally got land and built a ranch. And I looked for those ponies, I couldn't find them. So I went to the Nez Perce tribe and I picked up Nez Perce horses. And I tried to imagine long ago what happened to them. And one day a lady from the ministry came, Ministry of Natural Resources, came for coffee. And she was an endurance rider. I rode with her. And I said to her, when you fly overhead and do the moose count, do you ever see those little ponies in the bush? And she said, no. They're all gone. But they were there. They were all over. And if you can imagine somebody telling you that, your mind goes to places that you don't know if it's true, how could it be? But I thought I'm going to find them someday. So I said to her, where did they go? And she said there was only 4 little ones left. And they were on an island not far from here. One of the stallions was shot by a named Lester Bauer. He came there to build a carpenter. He thought it was a moose. And then the old stallion, the last one that was left, died of old age. So there was only 4 left. And she said they took them to Minnesota because they thought they were rare Mustangs. So they traveled across the ice. And there is paintings around, there's pictures and paintings around. And in this PowerPoint, you will see here, this is when I was hiding around the staircase. And the man told me they were on the islands, or he was talking, having coffee. They were on the islands and in the bush. And some people would go get them and buy them from the native people. And they would put a rope around their neck and they would swim behind the boats on Lake of the Woods. It's a big lake, big waves. And they would float like bobbers. So when I discovered that there was still some left and went to Minnesota, I decided I would go find them, and I contacted Rare Breeds Canada. And they told me where they were, and they were trying to bring some up into Toronto. And they did, but there was still herds left in the wild. And I decided I was going to go find them, and I did. They were all over. Some of them were running in the bush, some of them were contained with cattle, but there was quite a few difficulties of getting out into Canada. Nobody wanted to house any wild ponies. They had lice. They were very wild. So the rescues are a story in themselves. But when it finally brought them back into northwestern Ontario, people would say they're just ponies. They're disappointing looking. But if it wasn't for the stories, and when I was young and listening to the loggers, I would have agreed with them, but I knew that they were special because I heard what they could do. They were born with the deer and the moose. And that picture there, it might be on the next screen, is what the elders said. And I would say that, and everyone would argue with me. Bible verses, Genghis Khan, quarter horses, Arabs, all these people that had all this knowledge. And I only went to grade 10. So they would crush me, and I'd give up arguing. So finally, one day, I had a rabbit hide, and I started to paint on rabbit hides the stories. And this was one of the first paintings that I did on canvas, and I put it online, and hardly anybody attacked me. Then I knew that was my way of speaking. The elders said they lived free with the moose and the deer, and they were all over Turtle Island. And so when they came back, a man came, and you can flip it again, and he told me the story. The Catholic priests and the health authorities said they needed to be destroyed. They're breeding in front of the children. So their time was running out. And this is the story of when the young stallion was shot. They thought he was a moose. And then the old stallion died of old age. Then this man came to that little island named Taviation. He was from Minnesota. And that morning, he was with his quarter horses in Net Lake. And he accidentally got the bit. He was putting the bit on his quarter horse, and it hit him in the cheek. And it cut him, so he had to have stitches. But that day, he was supposed to fly over to that little island at Lac La Croix. But he went anyway. But he had a terrible headache when he got there. He went with the ministers to preach the Word of God. And he said he couldn't attend the service, and the children were so excited to see another Anishinaabe man. He was the only one on the plane. So he went and sat on the riverbank, and he said he felt something was watching him. He had his hands on his head, he had a bad headache, and he looked, and right across the riverbank stood 4 most beautiful mares, and they had a white aurora around them. And as soon as they stood up, they disappeared and took off into the bush, and he couldn't find them. So he went back home, and he talked to his father, Fred Isham, Wally Olson, Omer Hyde, and Walter Saletta, and they made the plan, and I called it the heist across the ice by the light of the moon. And they loaded up those mares, those 4 mares that they thought were Spanish Mustangs. And they brought them across the lake from Canada to Minnesota, and it was not plowed. So it was a bumpy, bumpy ride. And I talked to Wally Olson. He has just passed away, but he said that trailer tipped over and 1 mare died. And also Tuffy Isham wrote me a letter and said the same. So there's controversy whether there was 4, but there were probably 3. And when I spoke with the Spanish registry, the woman who went to inspect them, she said within 15 minutes, she had to announce, no, they are not Spanish Mustangs. So they thought, well, what are we going to do? Well, they must be barbs. It must be something like that, because there was no horses on Turtle Island. So Walter Saletta took the 2 biggest mares, took the 2 biggest mares, Dark Face and Diamond, if there was 2. We're not sure, because 1 may have died when it flipped over. And then Fred Isham took Lillian and Bishki, the smallest little mares. They did survive. And he bred, within 30-some years, the Mustang back out, because they bred them with a Mustang named Smokey, and then after that, Fred kept them in Net Lake. So he bred that Mustang back out. So with that little Mustang did save this breed, because he was a tiny little Spanish Mustang from Kim Kingsley from North Dakota. From what I researched, the logger, Walter Saletta, used Smokey more. So we have some bigger ones. It's like a type A, type B. And then the 2 from Fred Isham, Rare Breeds Canada could not get them at all. They were running loose in the wild. And half of Walter Saletta's were still needed to be rescued, and they were going to auction. Rare Breeds Canada was starting to fall apart, and they had to close their program off because the little stallions were out of control, and then asked me to take some of them, but they needed more rescues, so I said yes. I asked all over. I called Trudeau's office. I called every place you could imagine. Lawyers. Paul Schaefer. I called so many people because I had no money. So I had to sell my first riding horses to people that own Petro-Canada to get the money to get these little ponies. And everybody said, no, you're crazy. I had orders, I had a big facility. I did Western riding, I was breeding. I had trained all my foals, and I was Western at the time, so I sold my horses, my first one I ever had, to get the money to go get them. The first rescue was the rescue of Walter Saletta's herd, and it was bigger, but there was a few small ones in there that Fred Isham gave to Walter. And you cannot find these stories anywhere, in a book or a society. I'm telling you the story. So then, they always tried to get Fred Isham's little ponies off of Lillian and Bishki. But there's no way they could because the man who had them was named Lloyd Hoss. He was a Vietnam vet with a plate in his head. And Walter's herd, where Walter's herd kicked Lloyd away and said, "You don't get off my farm," because Lloyd said there's something mixed more in those ones, they're bigger. But anyway, one day I found Lloyd Hoss and he was in bad shape. He was sick, wolves were killing the ponies. John Fisher, the vet in Cook, Minnesota, had his dogs that were ripped apart, and I asked him to let me come and get them. He said, "You got one day or you're going to be shot." And I said, "I'll be there." He called me later on and he said, "It's too late, I'm going to shoot them." I said, "Please don't." They didn't have a horse trailer. I took off as fast as I could and went there. And I pleaded with him, leave them in this enclosure. It's about the size of this, about 5 times the size. I said, "Please just open that gate and I've got hay." Because they didn't have hay, they were in the bush and it was a really good hay. And I left it in there. I said, "If they go in and close it, I'll be here in the morning with a horse trailer." And that's what happened. When we got them in, it was midnight. By the time the storms, everything went into the vet's office, all you could see was my eyes. I was full of mud, everything was in the dirt, in the mud. But they got on, and it wasn't pretty. But they got on, and I said, "I'm sorry, I've got your office, I can't believe you waited." He said, "No, thank you." I said, "There's mud everywhere. Thank you, you're saving historical ponies." He understood, because he knew Walter and Fred Usher. So they came back, and then I had a lady come from Manitou. She has books, very popular books, Annie Wilson. And she came, the newspaper came, and Annie Wilson told me the story. While everybody else is telling me I'm crazy, she told me the story. I had one. And we spoke spirit talk. And from what you told me, you understand spirit talk. I'm raised Catholic. I wasn't sure, but I was searching and going to sweats. And she said, my job was to help when the wild rice was being harvested. If those little ponies come to steal the rice, I was supposed to stick my head out of the teepee hole and holler. But I didn't. I gave them some rice and shooed them off because I knew we needed them to move back anyway. And the little bird there's some little birds here. My relatives come from White Earth, and they're wild rice harvesters like you would not believe. Processing plants, homemade, made out of wood by one 83-year-old man. My cousin Jimmy Merhart, his name is Stands Alone. He talks, does funerals. He told me, and that's my other name, Mamaway Wiidokdaadwin. As we pick rice, he says, watch for Mamaway Wiidokdaadwin. The little snake that jumps from lily pad to lily pad. It's the keeper of the wild rice. And he made 23 birch bark canoes, him and his son. And they told me the lily pads, when the sun shines, it's like a mirror, and it radiates heat to the rice hulls and makes them really thick and healthy. And the fish have to swim and fertilize. And we need each other. We need these little ponies back. Because the deer can't take care of everything. They can't make the trails. They can't spread and be the keepers of indigenous plants. So this is the story about that. Then one day, I said, it was called Stanjacoling at the time. Now it's different, it's Saskatchewan, or I don't even know how to pronounce it. But I said, come out, come and see these ponies. I didn't have much time, and I didn't have any money. So I just got on them. And I thought to myself, that's what they used to do long ago, is just get on them. So he told me this story. And he said, there was a little pony over here on our reserve, and it was a merry little goer. One day a little girl got on Pony's back and went to see her relatives. And when she got there, she visited them, but all of a sudden a snowstorm hit, and it was a blizzard. And she couldn't see her way home. But wildlife doesn't get lost. They look back. And my partner, Ray Tucker, over here, he always says to me on the lake, because he grew up on an island, look back, or you're not going to find your way home. So looking back at all these stories, we can all get home. All our cultures are so rich. And these stories, we're going forward so fast, we don't look back. So this pony knew its way back, and that little girl froze, and she laid down and put her hands under the mane, and the pony did not move until it could feel her hands warming, and it could hang on. It started to move, its body warmed her body, her legs started to grip, the pony took off, winding down trails, going around the shortcuts, knowing where the wolves were. It went where the deer and the ponies make the trails, the fastest trails, and it stopped right at the little girl's house. I had many jobs because I had too many horses. Everybody said I was crazy. Not anybody would really help me. I can't even repeat the names that I was called, and I cannot repeat the names of what these ponies were called. People thought they were worthless. And I got sick, and I was still finding my way to where I belonged with the Anishinaabe culture of my relatives. And one day I'm laying on the couch, well not one day, for a month, I was laying on the couch and I could only lay one way and lost the hair on the side of my head. And I couldn't get in to get a colonoscopy and things like that I needed. And all of a sudden in the little cabin that hardly had any insulation, the back door opened. And 13 little people come in that door, one after another. And I laid there and I thought, the 12 disciples? But no, why are they dressed in woodland clothing? They had suspenders, checkered shirts. They looked like they were little loggers. And they were about this high. I lifted my blanket and they all came underneath it. And then I woke up in the hospital. When I got out, I talked to my medicine man. I had no idea. He said, those were the little people. They come to see you. They knew that you weren't well. You told me you heard them before, and you feasted your family, you feasted your name, but you never feasted the little people. I said, I didn't know about them. He said, they were here last night. I said, how do you know? He said, because this pony was a black pony, and he pointed over at her, and he said, that macaw, they were in her mane last night. I said, how can you tell? He said, they left braids and dreadlocks, and they go in there, to stay warm at night. And I couldn't believe it. So when these stories came out, I didn't know. So I went out and I put the feather in Macaw's hair, and I have a brooch that had that claw on it. And that's why I painted that. And I painted what the little people's faces look like. There's leprechauns, there's angels in other cultures. But this culture here is different, and it's for everyone too. And everyone to learn other people's cultures is beautiful. So that's why I painted this. Not only were these native ponies here, they were everywhere. Yeah, it's true, there wasn't any horses, but there was ponies. They were Indian ponies. And when I researched for decades after I got the herd, I finally found 450 pages and more. And they said, we need to get rid of the worthless little ponies. The Indian agents wrote it down in the archives. And my eyes went huge. What? Because they're worthless, and there is no profit that can be made from them. They are in the way. We have to convince the chiefs. We can convince probably the young chiefs, but the old chiefs don't want to let them go. But we need to switch them for cattle. The ponies are eating the crops. I'm not sure if that's the last one or not. This one here is one we're going to use with the music, but it is the first one that I painted of Annie Wilson with her pony. All over Canada, this painting over here, those ponies are dancing on jackfish. In 1886, there was more jackfish in the creeks than you can imagine. They'd scoop them up with shovels and pitchforks. And thank you, Ray Tucker, because he showed me fish are incredible. Their skin is just as strong, if not stronger, than leather. Because when they're under the water, everything's equal. There's no weak parts, because there's just, what it is pressure is all equal under there. So when you scrape off the scales and you can tan the hides, you can make fantastic leather with it. So the painting there across Canada with the jackfish on the bottom has fish scales on it. It has fish skins, and it also has birch bark. My grandmother, who was very Anishinaabe and spoke Ojibwe, she used to put birch bark on her paintings. So these paintings here are all about the stories. I just could go on forever and ever. And that little one over there is probably the 5th call that the phone rang, ring, 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 ring. Please, can you come and save more ponies, please? And oh yes, I can. Operation Black Stallion, 3 wild stallions. The roads were closed, an ice storm. I went through, I don't know if I can reach it, but I don't want to raise a kerfuffle like I usually do. This is so true. I was told by the police you cannot go. The roads are closed. These 3 wild stallions are semi-truck. They're snubbed up to the front with all zoo animals that are going to Vancouver. If you don't meet this truck on the Kenora Junction, they're going to Vancouver and they will be going for slaughter. And I was so scared. But I remembered those 4 men. They went across that frozen ice with no plowed roads. A closed road? That ain't gonna stop me. Everybody said no. And back there is my skunk pits, and it's hard to see, but that painting back there, somebody tried to stop me. They loaded up the horse trailer the day before, a horse trailer in the junkyard that was never used, with birch right to the top. And at 10 o'clock at night, I snuck out there and I emptied that birch. And it was the lightest birch I'd ever left it. I was so full of adrenaline. And I threw all that birch off that horse trailer. And I took the old pickup truck with no 4-wheel drive, no heat, no windshield wipers. And I hooked it up. And it was the biggest ice storm we've ever had. You know when those hydro lines bent over? That was the time. And when I got to the Kenora Junction, it was closed. The Trans-Canada was closed because the semi-trucks collided. And they said, ma'am, the plow truck come through and said, I don't know how you made it through here. I haven't seen a car come through here for hours, and all day long it's been closed. I said, I made it. I blew right through there. So I sat there in that old pickup truck in that trailer. And every time the plow truck would come by, he'd give me Tim Hortons coffee. And then all of a sudden I saw lights come, and here comes the semi-truck. Oh, I could just cry, but I'll tell you, it was glare ice, and it was ice on the road that was clear, black ice. We had to unload the gazelles, all those zoo animals in crates, like the crates were about from here to the couch, off onto the ice, and always I could think, you horse people must understand this. What's going to happen when these black stallions, wild ones, come off this horse trailer on thick glare ice? They came off. And I learned after that, I can ride a wild horse safer on ice than I can ride on good ground. Because they're wildlife, and they know how to cross the ice. This one over here, Dolly, Ray Tucker's grandpa had him. Dolly showed them how to get across the ice safe for the trapping. So those black stallions came on, they got on the horse trailer, they were fighting once they got on the horse trailer. I had to get on, the semi-truck took off, I'm all by myself, and I snubbed up them stallions as tight as I could, and I felt terrible, but I had to. All those Western roping skills and all those things, I gathered them together because I had to dominate them right now. I barely made it to Soneros. I jackknifed the whole way, and I slept in that truck in Soneros on the side of the highway till the next day when the sun shone and the ice melted, and off I went home to an unwelcomed community. More stallions, more problems. But I can't help but not be happy. And I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm sorry I talked so long. If there's any questions, I'm not sure about the time frame here, but if there's any questions, of course, I have a lot of unanswered, but some I might not know the answers, but this painting here was my dream. And I don't even have it finished yet. I have just mounted it there. And I just can't believe it. These ponies were everywhere. In the States, the generals wrote letters. Any army soldier hates to hear this, but you cannot beat the speed and endurance of an Indian pony. They were at Custer's battle. Chief Bigfoot got 43 of them taken from him. I have a painting with 43 feathers with Chief Bigfoot on his Indian pony. They marched 15 to 25,000 Indian ponies with warriors, women and children at the battle of Custer's battle. So it goes on. They were all over, and that's why I painted this. The Pony Express was Indian ponies at the beginning. So, miigwech everyone, and thank you for being patient with me and listening to the stories. I appreciate it a lot. Appreciate everyone here. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. We could listen to you forever, and hopefully we'll hear more from you a little later. So before we start to head out, a couple of things. I didn't do housekeeping, because I'm not really good at housekeeping. There is a washroom inside and around the corner, but there's also a washroom trailer outside, because it's just a single washroom. So just to let you know. So I thought before we go outside, maybe I could let you know about the Indian pony that you're going to meet today. So 2 Moons is her name. Ms. Debiki Geeses, which means 2 moons. And you'll see on her forehead that she has a beautiful marking of a full moon and a half moon on her forehead. And so I'll tell you a little story about where she came from and how she got here, and so that you have that knowledge when you go to meet her. So I got a call about 3.5 years ago from a woman that said, there's an Indian pony on a ranch out near Severn Bridge, and they're about to put her on a trailer and ship her to, where's Rhonda? To Vancouver. So it's an interesting dynamic that they're sending these ponies, you know, across, like putting them on transports and sending them across the country. And they said, we thought that maybe the community should actually, you know, have this pony in their care. And I said, absolutely. And so I drove out to this farm, and it was a ranch, but it was like I think it was like a children's kind of lesson school. It was very colonial, we'll say. We'll just frame it that way. But this pony could not be ridden. There were no children that were skilled enough to ride this pony because she's a spirit pony. She's, you know, semi-feral, she's very strong, you know, she's very fast. So the woman that owned the farm, she was a bigger woman, and she tried riding her when she was too young. She shouldn't have been ridden, and she shouldn't have had her on her back, so she hurt her back. So then what they did was they put her in, they had a business, you know, when you go to the fair or something like that, or a children's birthday party, and they harness horses up and they make them walk in circles. So then they tried her in that, and she said, no thank you. So the woman that owned the farm, she said, you know, this pony, she's not working out here, so can you take her? And so when I went to pick her up, she was feral. She was, they couldn't handle her. The only way that they were able to ask her to do anything or had been able to help her, you know, get from point A to point B was always by bribing her with food. And so something else that often happens in the mainstream kind of Western horse world is like this very forced early weaning, where foals are taken from their mamas way too early. And later that causes a lot of attachment trauma, which is what we're often working to address and heal in the community, is attachment trauma, you know, where people don't have these safe, kind of secure attachments with their caregivers or, you know, whomever. So as a baby, she didn't have an opportunity to really create that bond, that healthy, safe, connected, nurturing bond with her mama. She was forced and removed from her too early. So for 3 years, we worked on healing her attachment trauma, which was slow and mindful, and we asked very little of her other than to just be close to us. And so in the beginning, the only way, and you'll notice, you know, when you see a foal suckling it's from its mom, you know, its little nose is up like this, right? And it's trying to connect. It's trying to be close in a horse way. So she never had that opportunity. So that's how she would approach humans, is by, you know, putting her nose and being very mouthy and trying to get connected that way. So there's a remnant of that left with her. You know, she likes to touch now. She likes to kiss and be a little bit, you know, use her nuzzle to get close. That's how she knows how to connect. But she's really grown and she's really matured, and I'm so happy that you know, caring for horses, as Rhonda can attest to, it's a big job. And I heard Rhonda say at one point, I had too many. And I was in the process of having too many horses myself. And so I was so grateful and so happy when I was able to connect with Ashley. Ashley had been expressing an interest in, you know, reintegrating her or developing a relationship with horses. And so I said, how about you go and meet Two Moons? She was at a rehab center down in Tottenham at the time. And, you know, start to develop a relationship with her and see how that goes. And the reason why she was there is because she had developed equine metabolic syndrome, which is equivalent in humans to diabetes. So we can relate to that, you know, from a community perspective with the high rates of diabetes. So she'd been on eating too much grass and not moving enough, and so she developed equine metabolic syndrome. And if you look at that in contrast to her pre-colonial life, you know, those ponies, they lived in the bush. They didn't eat green, lush grass, and they traveled miles and miles every day, and they ate bark, and they ate roots, and they ate poplar buds, and they lived a natural, healthy life where they were engaged in movement all the time. And so in her previous living situation, she didn't have that opportunity. So what we've created here, and you'll see it today, is a small version of the bigger vision. And the bigger vision is to be able to create a much larger space and to build a herd so that these ponies can become a natural part of the landscape here again as they were once before, and to engage youth in what we would refer to as kind of like natural herd management. Imagine the healing that would take place for children and youth, and being able to have these organic relationships with these beautiful, beautiful kin, the horse kin. So that's the bigger, broader vision. Today is one step in many steps that have brought us here, and there are many steps to go. But I feel very fortunate to have you all here today to be able to lift this vision and to be part of this vision. So as we go out today, you'll see the small setup that we have here is what's called a paddock paradise, or a track system. So there's no grass. You know, there's this myth that, you know, horses need to have a lot of grass. But horses didn't historically eat grass. They moved. They might have came upon a meadow, and they might have eaten that meadow down. And when it was eaten down, then they would have thought, okay, it's time to move on. And they would have walked 25 miles to the next patch of grass that they would all have to share. And so this little setup, this track, there's no grass. There's a little bit of grass on the sides, but there's really great quality hay, very low sugar, just like a diabetic diet, and really excellent water. So the horses have to move through the paddocks and around to get to different hay stations, and that's what keeps them healthy and moving. So I just wanted, yeah, absolutely. So before I move on, I want to acknowledge the owner of the farm, Gina, and the property manager, Jag, and their family, and their generosity, because there's nowhere that I could have went where I could have asked, can you please let me set up a paddock paradise? Can you please, afford me this space? Can you let me try this? Can we do this? Can we bring people in? Can we do all these types of things? So I really want to acknowledge your huge spirits, your openness, your generosity, and your kindness for hosting us and, affording us all of these opportunities. I really appreciate it. So, miigwech. I'm going to pass it back to Rhonda for a minute, and then when Rhonda's done, what we'll do is we'll congregate out on the grass, and we'll wait for our beautiful women's drum group, to organize around us. And while they're organizing, you can grab a quick coffee, use the washroom, and then we're all going to go together, one big herd. And the women are going to lead us through the barn so you can get a quick glance at, the beautiful facility inside, and right out the back into the paddock, where we'll see Two Moons and her friend Peyote. So Peyote and Two Moons have known each other for a very long time. I think even before this lifetime. So they live together, they've lived together here, they've lived together in other spaces. And we'll go back and we'll meet them briefly. So, miigwech.
Thank you so much for giving me one more opportunity to say something that's very important, because actually I traveled here not just to tell the stories of the past. When I got the ponies back from the wild, I did not get them back to be colonialized. And they're not livestock. These ponies are Indian ponies, native ponies, but they cannot be full spirit ponies if they're contained. Once a culture is able to do what they've always done, powwows, ceremonies, worshiping, dressing, then they're full-spirited free people. These ponies will never be full-spirited native ponies if we don't understand they need the loom. They need to learn from the loom. And when they were wild, I lived with them. And I've jumped, I've done endurance, barrel racing, trained. I've never learned so much. And I've never healed so much. Trauma can be healed with the land and the water. They need the water. The water will teach them. The stallions call like a loon when they're wild. When they're wild, they're full-spirited. They survived Dead Horse Gulch because they knew the plants that were healthy in the quarter horses, thoroughbreds, and Morgans that they sent up to the gold rush, threw themselves off the top because they needed to die, because they were in so much pain. But these full-spirited horses had the spirit to carry the packs because they had the life of the land that taught them. They need to learn the water. And when I had little herds, wild herds, they never stopped nursing till they were sometimes 3 years old. They lived with their grandmothers. We can learn so much. And the world needs them. They need the little herds back again. And that's why I'm so excited being here, because I believe there's a dream, and this dream here, that somebody will do it. I'm working on it on my end, but I'll help anybody that's working it on their end, because the world can see it. If there's drones all over, the bushes are a creation of a preserve. It could just be one little wild herd to start with. We are all going to be so blessed when we see that baby being born in the wild. Not in stables where there's bacteria everywhere and people are imprinting and putting their hands on them. Over there's a moose behind the pony. They were created off the moose. They have so many gifts. The kingfisher goes so fast into the water and up, you'll never see it, but it'll get that fish. There's so many things these ponies need to learn. They are actually vegetarians in a way because they eat fish, that eat fishy plants. Fish smell like plants. They stole the ducks out of the hunters' coolers because ducks eat plants. They can teach us a healthy way of living that lots of cultures know, but some have forgotten. And so if we have wild herds again and let these ponies be full spirit, native ponies again, eating native plants, it's going to be, wherever this preserve is, it's going to be a place that's so unique. And people, they love people. People can come close to them, but we can learn from them. So all the stories are reasons why we need wild herds, because these stories, and I have hundreds of them, are all from the wild. And thank you very much, Gina, and your organization, and Ashley, and everybody that's been a part of this, all of you, because I'm just feel so uplifted being able to share my thoughts and my dreams for everyone to be blessed like I was, because when I slept with them, the wild herds, I spent more time running around on my knees and my hands with them, imagining what it feels like to get something stuck in your rib to make a, left knee. The thing is I turned into a wild pony. And I want everybody to. And the wild ponies learn from the moose. And I want everyone to turn into a moose and be those animals in the cities. Because cities can be beautiful with animals and with them in our hearts. Cities are going to be great. And everywhere, all over the world, in France I just traveled, they had little tiny white ponies too that were colonized into bigger horses. It happened all over. We can all be reindeers, we can all be eagles and plants and everything. So thank you very much everyone for letting me get opportunity to chat again. Good.